Well, hello and welcome. Well, finally, Ijabo, Ijabedu. The State of the Nation address as mandated by Article 64, the 1992 Constitution, that President, once we've handed the mandate of the nation to your hands every year, you need to come to Parliament and tell them what the state is in. Past governments have come and they normally tell you what's in the pipeline, what they're going to do, what's maturing, what's seedling, what's germinating, and not necessarily, what the man on the street is feeling or facing. But guess what? Today, A was cause and effect. There were all examples, a cross-section of people of different cultures, different political, different religions, all in Parliament today, and for everything that the President spoke about, there was somebody in Parliament representing a challenge which is now no more. I mean, what would you say? What more would you ask? The minority said that was the most glorified campaign message they've ever heard. The majority are saying that this is the most beautiful and most innovative speech ever they've heard. But that's what we're expecting. We're expecting that the minority won't like it and the majority will like it. But then you always ask, the few who are Ghanaians who are lurking in between, what is your position? Indeed, if you listen to the speech and you go home, is that the reality on the ground? That's what we need to know. One question I asked this afternoon, and again it cuts across going back quite a while, that all the numbers of the list of schools that were mentioned in Parliament today, the 200 schools and this, is there any Parliament member or any president who would even risk sending the award to that school? If the answer is no, which it is, then you and I should ask, what sort of education are they providing? And indeed, should we applaud and urge them on? That's the sort of conversation I'm going to have today, and I'm going to have it with one of my favorite politicians that I mentioned the other time. You'll see him shortly. My name is Nana Sakwao. This is PM Express, and we are looking at the President's address today. Thank you very much for staying, and what more is important today than you and I to discuss what state this nation is in? And we've gotten an elaborate account from the President, which is 4 hours. What more would you want? List and list and list of roads, hundreds and hundreds of beds, schools upon schools. Indeed, all records have been broken since the first school was established in this country. So we're here to account to see if indeed that's what's on the ground for you, or if you think, no, it was too elaborate, it was just a political campaign. With me in the studio is Kweku Kwatin, who is an honorable member of Parliament for Obuasi West. He's an economist, a banker, an insurer, and also a member of the Select Committee on Finance. And I must say, he's on top of his game. I'm just going to take a little insert. Anyway, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
I'm going to take a little insert on some of the brilliant submissions made in the House today, and then after, we're going to have a conversation.
The nation was unanimous in support of the National Anti-Corruption Action Plan, and that is partly why the nation was united through our honorable representatives here in Parliament in adopting the NACAP. Following its adoption, I have inaugurated the High-Level Implementation Committee as one of the structures to facilitate the implementation of the plan. The committee is responsible for providing strategic policy direction and advice to implementing bodies and assisting TRAJ and NDPC in monitoring and coordinating the implementation of NACAP. The committee consists of representatives from key state institutions, the private sector, and civil society. Mr. Speaker, the progress report presented by the Acting Commissioner of TRAJ reveals that significant progress has been made in the first year of implementation of NACAP. Despite some challenges, government is determined to play its role under NACAP and will sanction heads of institutions that do not comply with the directives on the implementation of NACAP. The country is doing its best to combat money laundering and terrorist financing after establishing the required legislative framework. 3 successful convictions involving money laundering have been secured, following continuous analysis of intelligence of over 200.
Well, thank you very much. And this piece was on corruption, another very, very important subject in our country today. Indeed, corruption has become a chewing stick. We wake up in the morning and that's all we talk about. I've said that maybe we just love to hate it. That's why we haven't done anything proper to get rid of it. However, the president is saying, now listen, it's because I am fighting this thing tooth and nail. That's why we seem to hear corruption all the time. And it's not that natural fact. There is corruption. 056-800-000. 056-800-000. You need to join in this conversation as we are going. Let me come straight to my brother. Corruption. You know, the president said, listen, I don't think any government has fought corruption more than any, you know, he's fighting his own people, he's prosecuting his people. And because of that, because he's taking people to court and hounding people and chasing people, it's like a church that's always singing Metiabonsam, Metiabonsam. So you seem to think that, oh, there's only Obonsam in the church. But indeed, what they're saying is that they are condemning Obonsam and not necessarily the other way around. So that's the issue on the ground.
Yes, he called it the paradox of exposure, the paradox of exposure. And I will have my comments on that. But before I do that, I'd like to say good evening to viewers and to people in my constituency, and to start by pointing out of the entire State of the Nation address that there was too much fanfare, and this one.
Oh, but it's life not too serious.
Exactly, you probably are right. But I said it's not just of this administration. I mean, we see State of the Nation addresses delivered in other countries, and sometimes what I see here, I look at the cost. I'm a finance person, I'm very sensitive to cost and efficiency. And I ask, without all this fanfare, will it hurt the delivery of this message? If it wouldn't, then we probably need to look at it again, because a country that hustles to buy chalk, of course, we can engage in some of these things, but we should seek to be limiting it as we go. And as I indicated, it's not just of this administration, but if I look at the dancing, the arrangements, the parades and everything, just because the president is coming to tell us the state in which we find ourselves, most of which we know already, for me was an unnecessary cost, and we need to look at that. Corruption, I think every government would profess to fight corruption. I'll be surprised if any government said it had it as a policy to encourage corruption. So I don't find it surprising that President Mama said today that he has been fighting corruption. He says he's the best, perhaps, fighter of corruption in this country. He said things like that.
Well, according to my message, you didn't even send your name.
He said something like that. We're in the house. He said
no. There was a message here. I just wanted to add to what you're saying, okay. or against what you're saying. He says the president is doing well. After Nkrumah, he's the second best president we ever had. But he didn't add your name, so I can't add your name. But that's
well, people are entitled to that, and these are not statements I want to take away from people. If somebody judges that the president is the best president he's ever had, why not? I mean, this is a free country. The person should be entitled to a view like that. But in the end, the people whose lives are affected by the president we so admire must feel that somehow their welfare is being catered for. In the case of corruption, if I can quickly comment on that and leave it. Yes, the indicators would come. Sometimes they say the perception is that we are getting worse. Sometimes they say we are second worse in terms of perception. Sometimes they say, oh, we are improving and all that. All those indicators may be good. But Nana, the reality is that when people begin to see in a particular president or government a determination to fight corruption, that is frightening. That if I'm a municipal chief executive, I'm a district chief executive, I'm a minister, and I'm found to have been corrupt, this president would not spare me. and people begin to be afraid, that is when the waste we're seeing, the corruption, will go down. I think there are enough indications around to suggest to us that there are many areas where the president could have cracked the whip but hasn't. And
the laws, what more can he do, Mr.
Precisely, the laws.
The laws.
I agree that I don't even believe in this revolutionary kind of fighting corruption. I think we must let the laws work. When we have a Procurement Act that says, before you a state agency procures, if it is restricted tendering or if it is sole sourcing, and I'm referring to Section 40 of the Public Procurement Act, go to the Public Procurement Authority and get approval. Then the Public Procurement Authority, what they do is that they look at the contract and sometimes they suggest that do value for money audit before we give you approval. So it is not for nothing that we say go and get approval. And then we have a transaction, and I'm referring to the bus rebranding. That was done with, most people don't know that it was oil money. The oil money that gave us so much expectation, the ABFA, it was part of which it was used for that project. And people in clear violation of Section 40 of the laws you just mentioned, they go ahead and transact a business. And then when the business is complete, they now go to the PPA and say that we want approval. And then that approval is given.
After the bus has been branded?
After the bus has been branded, the monies have been paid. I have the records. Because PPA publishes public single sourcing approval that it gives and the time. And we know the time for the transaction because the payments have their dates. That's the big deal about this.
The president said today that, the chief of staff had authorized and some money came through. So you're giving a different
that's what I'm driving at. What I'm saying is that this is the law. So if anybody does this and it comes to the notice of the president, it ought not to be refund a certain amount. Because really, if I'm allowed to, pardon my hard choice of words, to steal, and when I'm caught, all that is going to happen is that refund the money. Then you're not fighting corruption. And you see, I cite this example for discussion because it is what will signal to others who would be tempted to do this, that in this administration, you will not get away with it. Look, if this thing had happened and the president has said, to begin with, it is criminal to transact a business. And when the business is complete, you now go to PPA and you don't disclose to them that this thing, I have done it already. You tell them that I want sole sourcing approval from PPA. This is what you say to PPA. Is it not criminal? Somebody ought to be prosecuted for that. Now, when
could it be that, look, it's something that was going to be done, it's so you just go ahead and do it, and then
to start with, it was an abuse of the law. You see, sole sourcing is not something you just do. The law is clear that where there's an emergency, where the person you are sourcing from is the only company that can do it, and you're under some pressure, that is when you do this. Bus rebranding, during campaigns, you see all the vehicles branded, and are we really short of people who would brand buses? That if we want value for money, we cannot throw the tender out there and say, come and compete so that we get the best. We can do that. Even if they had gone through proper sole sourcing, it still would have been, in my respectful opinion, a violation of the law. But somehow, sole sourcing, and all I'm hearing from the president is that, oh, they are refunding part of the money. And there's another thing I mentioned in this particular media house the other time, that you see, the only reason a private company that goes into an agreement with government for a particular transaction, and then the transaction is complete a year later, one party, government, comes and says, look, pay back some of the money. Then you say, yes, please, I'll do it. The only reason people will do that is that when you are a thief and you are caught, and you're not going to be jailed, and you're going to be made to refund part of the money, then you oblige. Otherwise, trust me, no decent, honest...
Goodwill and long-term relationship.
So the money that is going to be refunded, you're going to take a bank loan, or that was part of their profit in the first instance. That more than half was part of their profit.
Well, I mean,
And I know that the nature of your job, media people, sometimes you advocate for the devil. But sometimes I think things are just plain wrong. No. And I don't say this
as a private person. You don't tell me how much I charge for my services. So if somebody called me and said, "Look, Nana, I need you to come and MC for something," I don't even like MC. So
sure.
I quote 10,000. He calls my brother says, "Well, I'll charge 1,500." I mean, you can't determine that, well, Nana, you charge me too much. That's what I want, and you agree. If for one reason I realize that, listen, this guy's got more MCing programs coming up, and so he says, "Look, Nana, I think the 10,000 was a bit steep. Okay, well, I'll take 3,000 back, and so that in the future we can do some business." So on that basis, I give you some back. Not necessarily because I thought it was wrong. That was my fee.
And it is a reason the Minister for Transport had to resign. Because some private man thought goodwill. When private man displays goodwill, the ministers resign. Look, what I am saying is that I don't even like to overflog this particular matter, but it emphasizes the point that somehow, in his quiet moments, and I refer to the president, he looks at these issues and can say, "Well, I'm not going to punish anybody." And that is what worries me, because the signal, people are afraid of punishment and sanctions.
See, again, Kweku, see, if this thing was to go through court, we will be here for the next 10 years, and we probably won't get a penny, and we'll be losing money. So if they've agreed to give us some, then fine. Because look at this Wyoming case. It's been dragging on. I mean, very soon my son will finish school, and not a penny is being good. And I'm sure the state is losing money by sending lawyers to and fro to court. So maybe if they say, "Well, let me give you some part of it," probably for cost. Might as well choose that option.
Is it not sad that as a people, we get swindled, and we are now begging that people just pay us back our money, because the institutional arrangements that we have would be delaying in getting us our due? So why don't we just settle for some deal? Is that how we build a nation that is fighting corruption? Okay. My conclusion on that, I could cite that one, I could cite that. We yourself have just mentioned the way you may. You see, it's a series of things that have happened in the past that would seem to suggest to people that there is a certain lack of real commitment. The JIDA irregularities. Has anybody been jailed? Have people paid the money? The Agams group unlawful payments that we are told again that private people transact business with government through contracts, and then government comes back and says it was a bad deal, refund some of the money. The private people say, "Yes, I will do it." I'm saying that we have a bunch of with respect, fraudsters, sometimes posing as private sector players. They engage with state officials in all sorts of things, and then when they are caught, they are happy to refund. If I run a concluding
there's no control price.
What I'm saying is that...
So if you decide to pay for my services, well, that's how my services cost.
Good. That is, I would have expected Smarties or the Agams group or any of these groups to say, "What? Refund part of the money? The price at which I got this thing was a fair price, and therefore it's a contract, we have executed it, and I'm not in a position to pay anything." And that anybody can scrutinize the entire transaction, look at other prices on the market, and I'll be vindicated. That is what a credible private sector player would do. Immediately you have a private sector player that says, "This thing, let me pay back. And then the money that is supposed to have been a reasonable margin on the cost of doing that, providing that service, now you are returning far back. You see, I don't even intend to dwell on isolated instances. The broad point I'm making is that when you have these things happening and we reduce it to refund the money, we reduce it to, we will collect the money we don't collect, and we never get around these things and people seem to take us for a ride, then the signal to the man out there is that, well, you can attempt it. If you are lucky, you get away with it. If you are not lucky, at the very worst, you'll be asked to refund some. I think the president ought to preoccupy himself with fighting these things instead of just saying that I am fighting corruption and I'm probably the best fighter of corruption since history. I don't think it's helpful.
Let me take a couple of messages here. This one says, "Nana, the president deserves a second term due to the massive infrastructure developments across the country. The minority will never appreciate what the president has done or doing. If they do, it will be relevant for them to campaign. This is Muhammad Abubakar. He comes in again and says, if you really want what JM has done, you must get a copy of the Accounting to the People book. The president was on top of happenings across the country. Let me get one more here. This one says, good evening, Nana. I really do enjoy your programs and always do my best not to miss any. What I have noticed from your show is that anytime you bring a party representative, he will speak in favor of his party and rubbish the opponent. I know the MP will only look at the downside of the address without complimenting the president where he's done well. I am going to sleep because an MP will never compliment the president. Ben from Jaso. No, Ben, don't go and sleep. I'm going for a break. When I come back, we're going to do the compliments. So stay tuned. Thank you very much for staying. This one says, Nana, the state of my nation are that. 1, we are in a state of hopelessness. 2, the state of my nation is that bus branding is more important than budget allocated to agriculture. Shame on you, Majid in Tamale. 0560-800-000. And now try and catch up with as many messages as possible. Hello, Nana. I really like that MPP MP in your studio. I admire him. He speaks well and straight to the point. This is Jonah. Let's go here. I think if the president really wants to fight corruption, then he must apply the principle of the Tanzanian president, Silas Nano in Takrade. Well, I rudely interrupted.
That's okay. I have one of my brothers send a text and said that an MP, he's going to sleep. Please don't go and sleep. You see, one way we can also build this country is to have people who have a critical orientation of government. It's not for nothing that we have a system that puts some politicians in opposition and puts some people in government. To be critical of government and to let the people feel that there's an alternative. There's nothing wrong with me discussing it alone. I'm sure you made efforts to get people from some of our colleagues from the other side.
Done every effort, John.
But it's even to make the point that I sometimes find it even more useful to engage with people who have opposing views. You know, if we always want to listen to people who we agree with, we never grow. So I agree. I'm an MP. I might be critical of government. I might be doing that. But so long as I have a basis for my criticisms, I think the burden is on everybody to listen. And now,
okay, before you go in there, just for Jonah's sake, is there anything in that 4-hour speech that you can tell myself that, look, ask for this, even if we were in government would have done? I mean, things like the roads. I mean, there was Dambai to Dambai, Boliga to Boliga, this. I mean, there was a list of roads that were being done. I mean, what more can the president do?
Yes, nobody can take that away. And if I am in Obuasi, the president did indicate that the road from Anua Kwanta to Obuasi, which is a big problem for those of us in Obuasi, because when we are coming to Kumasi, up from Anua Kwanta to Kumasi is good. From Obuasi to Anua Kwanta is terrible. So we love to talk about that road, we in Obuasi. Now, the president did indicate that that road is being worked on. And I have been commenting on all the media houses that nothing is happening on that road. So we consider that it's really unfortunate that when we're expecting the president to...
But you didn't find out what state they're working on. Maybe it's on drawing board, not necessarily physically. Maybe it's in the pipeline or something like that.
After 8 years, we've been putting pressure and I've been talking about this and we have received assurances. What drawing?
Okay, so maybe your stretch of road is not being done.
I was even moving on to say that we are disadvantaged. We didn't identify with the president at all today when he said work was being done on that road. We hope that would happen before December. Therefore, if we are sad that our bit of the road hasn't been constructed and there's no sign that it would, of course we have to be happy for those who are lucky to have their roads constructed. So for all those places that we saw the road done, we say, good for you. I think it's a positive thing for a government to use some of the resources to construct roads.
3,500 kilometers?
And yes, and the president also showed some schools. He showed many capital investments or infrastructural projects that I think it's a good thing. Nobody can say that it's wrong to provide a community with, say, a secondary school. And if you ask me whether there was anything that made me happy, it was the fact that at least, and of course you would expect that for a government that has been there for 8 years, in which the current president has been a vice president and a president, you would, I'm saying that a government that has been in power for 8 years, in which the current sitting president has been a vice president and a president, of course must do something. So I'm happy that he showed some roads. But the point many of us have made is that it is not sufficient for our resources to be used to do some roads. We also want to have the best value for our money. So yes, if all the taxes that have been collected, the highest any administration has been able to collect, there has been a lot of taxation under this government, the records are clear. If you look at the borrowing that has happened, 9.5 billion at the beginning of January 2009, we've now hit 100 billion Ghana cedis. You look at all that borrowing.
So Tekpe was disagreeing, but I'll let you.
No, he didn't disagree. I think that I was with him. Well, I'm not sure what you heard, but he made a point that is debt stock. Whatever it is, the Bank of Ghana says now we are at 100 billion. It's actually a little more than 100 billion Ghana cedis is our debt stock. I heard the finance minister say that, that 100 billion includes legacy debt. That is debt that the NDC government also inherited. I agree with him. Embedded in that 900 billion is 9.5 billion that they inherited. So if Honorable Tekpe says, look, it is not all ours, we inherited some, I'm saying that he's not lying. He's saying the truth. He inherited 9.5. So what he has added is actually 90.5 billion to the 9.5 that he inherited. But they
built more schools, roads, and hospitals than everybody.
Well, I would need that evidence, but there's more information. Now, if you look at that, you take the year 2014, for instance, and here I'm quoting from the government's budget, 2015 budget statement. Government said our debt had hit, in the 2015 budget statement, the government said our debt at the close of 2014 had hit 79.587 79 billion, let's say, 79 billion, about 79 billion. Now that means an additional 27.7 billion on top of what we had the previous year. So in that year alone, net borrowing is 27.7 billion. This is not somebody, these are figures from the government's own budget statement. In that same budget statement, government said that it spent 6.09 billion on capital expenditure. That's the roads, the schools, and all those things. The simple point many of us are making, that whilst we are happy that the roads are there, the schools are there, we want to ask government why it is borrowing and putting so little into infrastructure development. Because ordinarily, you collect your taxes and you have some oil money, you put that into your recurrent expenditure, you borrow, you invest so that you can pay back. Now, if we are borrowing 27.7 billion in a particular year, 2014, and expending just about 6 billion on capital expenditure, this is a cause for worry. So when you show me the roads and everything, what I tell you is that really, if you had used all the 27.7 billion into infrastructure development, maybe Obuasi to Amia Kwanta Road would have been captured. It's a legitimate point for me to make.
There was a lot of borrowing to go and basically pay back loans with higher interest. So maybe you owe 12% and then you borrow at 8% and then you clear the 12%. So at least, you cushion yourself.
If you borrow to clear existing debt, don't forget that you are where you are. You see, you borrowed money and you had some debt and you use it to clear it. So that debt will also go and this one will come and add.
No, but at 8% it will be better than keeping the 12% debt.
Whatever it is, you see, when you have it, you're owing. There's some money you have to pay. And then you don't have money to pay and it's due. So you go and borrow money at a lower interest rate. You use it to come and what? Reduce your debt. So in reality, if you're doing smart borrowing as we are being told, then when you borrow fresh at better terms to reduce the old debt, our debt stock should be coming down. So yes, people make that point, but the reality is that, let's even for simplicity of presentation, if you go and borrow to pay your debt, you are where you are. So how come our debt is rising? And
but with less pressure. I mean, if your original debt was, let's say, 10%, and now you've gotten 6%, I mean, you are 4%, a little bit, peace of mind.
Yes,
and what they're saying is smart borrowing. So now markets, are going to pay for themselves, DVLA, the airports, all this debt stock, as the finance, like Akosombo Dam, will be taking off the...
If I conclude on that point, I can conclude and I'll comment quickly on this one. You see, if we are borrowing, and only a small portion, 22% for 2014, is going into capital expenditure. What it means is that the remaining is going into recurrent expenditure. And what is recurrent expenditure? The bars branding we've been talking about, the things government has to do around, that would not repay itself. Then there's a danger. What it means is that in your day-to-day survival as a country, you have to borrow. You are borrowing to survive. And that is a problem. And that's the point I'm actually trying to drive at, that it is not sufficient for government to say that, look, I am constructing these roads. It's important that government makes us understand that the money that I'm borrowing that should have gone into capital expenditure so that it will increase our capacity to pay back these loans. We are having to consume some of it because we are just not able to generate enough to finance our everyday expenditures. That point has to be established. Then we come to your point. We say, what is smart borrowing? Smart borrowing is not cutting costs and ensuring that we don't go borrowing at all. Smart borrowing, in the opinion of government, is that, well, when state departments and state agencies borrow, I would not register it as central government borrowing. So on paper, it would look like central government has borrowed very little. In the end, Ghana Water Company and all those companies, when they borrow, it is their own debt. VRA, DVLA, should they go and borrow? Me, government, I don't know. It's their own. That's how we are going to now keep our books. So that every time, central government books will look very good. And we call that smart borrowing. That's disappointing. You know what? If VRA and all those state agencies, they deliver service on behalf of government. If VRA goes to borrow, government says it's not part of my borrowing. Unless we fix the cultures in VRA and in these state agencies so that we cut the waste and improve efficiency of resource use, in the end, VRA will not be, ECG and all those people will not be able to deliver on their mandate properly. And at that point, government will not be in a position to say, it is not my headache. So what I'm telling government is that, look, there's a saying that if you cut your tongue and you use it for meat, you've not done anything. You've not added any value to your body. If government really wants to cut borrowing, government must begin to do those reforms in the public sector. That will lead to a reduction. And here, half minute, I'll mention this, half minute. You know, government at some point said that, look, there are state-owned agencies that are generating enough IGF, internally generated funds, that they don't need to be paid by government. If I don't have to pay them, then government payroll would be smaller and will be reducing the public sector expenditure. Brilliant idea. And it's one of those policies that if this government would push, even some of us in opposition would support it. And then government listed some 10 companies and said all these companies, they must they must go. We think they can pay themselves so that we don't have to take additional money to pay them. And then government dilly-dallied onto 2015 and came and said, look, the 10th, I don't think I can do it. I will do 3. DVLA, Energy Commission, and Environmental Protection Agency. As for these 3, everything shows that they can do it. That was last year. We are still here. When I look at what is happening at DVLA, I get a sense that that is not going to happen. You see, apart from the corruption and the ways that we are talking about, sometimes laziness, governance laziness, in carrying out difficult reforms, when a government does not have the determination, and it's mark of good governance, that the government is determined and said, this one we will do it. When government cannot do that, it comes back to us. So what I'm saying is that in order to cut costs, don't just say that I'm not interested in what DVLA is doing. I'm not interested in this, mind your own business. Say that we will do the reforms that would make government expenditure really lean. Then we know we're getting somewhere. So then we don't have to borrow. That's my take on that. But broadly, what I would say in respect of the State of the Nation's address broadly is that you would expect ordinarily a State of the Nation's address to tell you where we are, to tell us what the challenges are, why the challenges are there, and here we know the challenges. The companies that have been closing down, the jobs that are being lost. Our own economy has now slowed down in growth. As a result, the difficulties in the economy has compelled us to go to the IMF to beg for a program. Now, we ought to, first, the president ought to have told us how did it,
credibility, isn't it?
So how come our own credibility wasn't sufficient and that we needed to go to the IMF to get more? How come? I mean, we must first diagnose and to tell ourselves that we went into that difficulty for this, and that reason.
Because we changed from normal wages to single pine, which ballooned initial, the wage bill planned, I think, about 7 billion or 8 billion, from nowhere onto the wage bill. I mean, it was a shock on everybody.
If we accepted that explanation for government, it would be wrong, because don't forget that we can always find wage bill as a percentage of revenue. We can always find that. When God gave us single spine, the same God also gave us oil money that previous government did not have. So and the same God also gave us resources that we did not expect. So what we have to do is to take, in terms of revenue, how much we have been making since, say, 1993 and then you weigh the wage bill against revenue, and you see whether really anything extraordinary has happened. I have done that analysis. Nothing extraordinary has happened. Dr. Baumia has also put out that point, that because this government has also benefited from resources its predecessors did not benefit from, the percentage of our revenue that goes into wage bill has not changed. So this whole talk about wage bill is an unfortunate excuse. But the point I am even making is that until we tell ourselves that we are where we are because government is just not generating enough to meet its expenditures, and it become a routine thing year after year, and therefore we need some reforms, we never deal with the problem. That is why I thought today the president was in denial in many of these things.
I mean, I know you're finance.
Sure.
This wage bill thing, I think they said it went up by 7 billion. We've gotten about 3 billion from oil. So assuming even if we did a straight, that leaves us about, 4 billion upside down. I mean, there's the Gang of Four, there's the Ridge Hospital, there are the 200 schools being built, there's the airport. There's quite a lot on the plate of government. I mean, we can't run away from this huge number.
You can always mention projects. And that is the difficulty of sometimes the way we politicians analyze these matters. You can always mention projects, and why? The Kufuor administration would mention several things, wouldn't they? Would mention the Yamaranza Road, would mention the Bui Dam, would mention all the many projects we embarked on. We mentioned many programs, the school feeding program, the LEAP, those on which the president had to make some people stand for ovation today. You see,
quickly,
I'm making a quick point there that all those things can happen, but in the end, we must look at government's own report. If government says that, in spite of all these, I'm doing it with a small fraction of the money I have borrowed, we are not in a position to say that, but it use it for road. Well, government itself has summarized the outcomes for us. The second point is that you don't even need to think so hard. Oil money is this much, and this money is this much. Look, government reports revenue it mobilizes for a particular year. The taxes, everything, the grants, everything. Government reports on personnel emoluments. That is the wage, the proper wage bill, wages minus the gratuity and all the related expenditures. And I'm saying that all we need to do is to take the wage bill and look at government revenue over the period that we have had this Fourth Republic. If there is an extraordinary jump of wage bill against revenue, then yes, we can say that, yes, there's a shock. But I have done that analysis. Dr. Baumia has done that analysis. You can get a budget statement and look at those figures straight away. You see that really it hasn't changed. And that is why until government clearly understands that it is not any wage bill matter that has caused the problem, and that it is, if you give me 30 seconds, I'll put this across. You see, traditionally, if you are the chief director of a ministry, and this one is not just with the NDC administration, if you are the chief director or a minister, and you have a nephew or a niece that completes university, they say, this one, put him or her somewhere, isn't it? Oh, put him somewhere. It's not based on an analysis of whether that setup needs that person. Then we continue to pile people. That's where the public sector, doesn't it? There are many things. I've just said that.
But you're not blaming that on this administration, right?
No, I've made that point, okay, yes. Yeah. As a result, in my opinion, we have a public sector that is too big for the work it does, for the productivity. What you are expecting of a government, and I have to make this point again, that it is not just a feature of this particular administration, but that is why we vote governments. When the government says it will deliver better Ghana agenda, you inherit a problem like this. You don't solve it by going to the IMF. You do those hard, difficult reforms, of course you are going to get political bashing. But that's the point of leadership. You cannot say that the thing is good. Sometimes when I have made this point, they say, oh, but if the president starts to do it, you, the opposition people, will be criticizing him and make him unpopular. And I said, yes, that is part of leadership. If the opposition identifies with those who are misunderstanding you and even they criticize you, is that an excuse for you, a president paid with the taxpayers' money, to
that's
say?
Unfair. That's unfair because all governments have done that. You know, anytime there's a mayor who's trying to clear the street, whether it was the MPP government or NDC government, you turn around and say, so I think that's it's an unfair comment.
In the end, what I say is that yes, there may be people criticizing, people not criticizing, but in the end, the things the president will do or will not do will determine where we would be as a people. If we make excuses for ourselves that, oh, all governments have been like that, and then we're going to continue being where we are. So it's to conclude on the point that the president did not address, in my opinion, the things worrying our society. And as I go out, just 1 minute, as I go out there, people know the problem. How many people will not tell you that I went to a government setup and it was 9:30, 10 o'clock, but the people have still not come.
But it's always been there.
Yes.
It's always been there. I mean, I'm sure since Buzia's time, it's been there till today. So then it becomes difficult to pin it down.
Well, if you are, but the point you are making, don't be so in a hurry to go and read the message. If the point we are making, Nana, is that it's always been there and therefore there's nothing we can do about it.
No, there's something we can do about it, but shifting the blame to say, oh, this is happening, and therefore it's as if to say it's your fault.
How many times do you need me to make this point that I'm not just saying this of this administration?
No, it sounds as if. It comes across as if.
Whatever it is, when you vote at any point, we should make the responsibility for dealing with the problems a matter for the existing government. Never mind, so what? So previous government did not do it, so what? So this administration will also not do it. The next administration that comes also says, oh, President Mama's government did not do it. It's not fair to ask me to do it. In the end, the man sitting there that says, I will deliver you a better Ghana, has to be asked to do it. And I would be happy.
Let me go for a quick break, and then I come back, we'll continue. But let me take just one message. We already knew the state of the nation before the president read it from his books. No hope for the youth. We simply need a positive change. This is Nana Poku Tutuka in Obuasi. So that's close
okay.
to
That's close to my conscience.
That's close to you. This one says, Nana, look, the MP is still not accepting that the president has done much. You should have brought an NDC person also. And this one, you are not fair. Silvanos Bongo. Silvanos, they won't come on. Trust me.
Say it well. You
well, we tried. We tried. You know, we tried. And feel like even mentioned the names of the people we tried to call. But they didn't come. Maybe they're busy, obviously. So they couldn't make it. We need people like Kwaku Kwarteng to tell us the truth. I am a known NDC member, but I think this man is making sense. A Jurama. We're going to take a quick message. When I come back, I'll continue with your messages. So stay tuned. Interesting. This, well, I'm here with Kwaku Kwarteng, who's an honorable member of parliament for Boise West. He's an economist, he's a banker, he's an insurer. So the guy lives and breaks figures. And he's also a member of the Select Committee on Finance in Parliament. This one says, Nana, tell the honorable MP that my vote will go for the party who will come out with a policy, one, to ensure that people with disabilities acquire interest-free loans, duty-free for people with disability. And this is S.A.M. Wuni in Tamale. That's a revolutionary idea, and I think I would, also champion that. Nana, what about the thousands of graduates who are out every year without a job? The president is not serious. He has placed an embargo on public sector jobs, and wherever you apply, they say no way. In fact, I wouldn't add that. It's a bit strong by saying that he's been trying to look for. Your guest himself is aware that JM is ready for business, and it's clear that this development that the president indicates shows victory in the coming elections for JM and all NDC parliamentary candidates. JM all the way, from David Kalio in the Upper West. This one says, Nana, are you telling us that you did not get any NDC person in the show assemble, but they'd be? Yes, I did not. I mean, I wouldn't come on air to come and lie, would I? I've told you, after my producer tried and we didn't get anybody. I would have loved the balance show. I'm finding it difficult, trying to balance the show here. So please, if I say we didn't get. Nana, my greetings to Honorable Kwarteng. The president should be serious. He will allow corrupt dealings to take place due to lack of supervision in order create, loot, and share, and later ask them to return it. What a shame. Ghanaians are wise to vote JM out. From Nana Kwame in Obuasi. Folks are...
People are watching.
Yeah, watching. Yeah, people are watching.
So that's the point. I mean, I just think that today, the president came with an attitude, sorry if I sound too critical, but he came with an attitude to make the point that, look, my government has done a lot for you Ghanaians, and therefore in 2016, vote for us.
But he has
that appeared to be his preoccupation in the delivery today. It was so obvious to me, I think it was obvious to many people, including those who...
There's no perfect governance, but he has done what...
I'm saying, yes. But I even think that in order that a government would be appealing and would easily get the votes of people, you have to let your preoccupation be, one, accepting the challenges that your people are complaining about, trying to explain why we are where we are, why, as I said, we've had to run to the IMF, why the economy has slowed down, why business is complaining, why unemployment is going up. You have to accept those realities. Try and
he did.
Discuss.
And he did.
I'm saying that the drift, the focus was more on, I've done so much for you, vote again for me. But if the focus had been more of, I can feel your pain,
Because it's not been our culture. It's not been our culture. All State of the Nation address has been, I will do this in the pipeline. Everyone.
You know, Nanami, I don't buy this idea about, oh, that's how we've always done. Oh, the Kufuor administration also did it like that. That thing just doesn't sit with me, because then we never make progress.
Well, but we can't create a culture and then blame somebody who doesn't follow the culture.
I'm not really blaming. I am saying that if things continue to happen as they have been, we will continue to be in the difficulties in which we find ourselves. If we want to change, we must change course. And if we are always going to have presidents who come, and today it was more than I have ever witnessed, almost 4 hours, and pictures of roads, and this, and nobody's explaining to why a large chunk of the money being borrowed is not going into those routes, but going into recurrent expenditure. I would have loved to see what steps government is taking to ensure that our day-to-day recurrent expenditures are financed.
Let me digress and I'll bring you back.
Yeah.
With regards to the teacher, the organizer, the farmer, the contractor who came to Parliament to prove that, listen, these are beneficiaries of the... What was your reaction on that? Or what's your opinion on that?
It's part of what I'm saying. I thought it was unnecessary.
You don't think it brought home to reality what's happening?
What is reality? Look, if somebody stays in the streets of Obuasi, the cost of living has gone up. They are finding it difficult to make ends meet. And there's another man from, Chebi or somewhere, a woman, that says, a problem in my community has been solved, and you are in Parliament on TV. In what way does it tell the person who is out there that somehow your condition is not as bad as you think because somebody says they are okay? I think, and when I looked at the diplomatic corps and all the foreigners sitting there, and I saw my president spend hours upon hours listing roads and listing this and mentioning roads that he says have work ongoing, but on which nothing is happening, as it is in my case. And I said, look, a State of the Nation address should capture broad themes.
Oh,
what are issues?
Wrap it up in a minute.
So it was the denial of the president about the real challenges and the pain of people out there, and therefore the denial of clear strategies to deal with those challenges that I found to be the weakest part of what the president did today. I think in future, the president, if any president wants more votes, you come and let the people see that you share in their concerns and their pain, and that going forward, there are strategies to deal with them. You don't come and tell people that I have done so well, vote for me again. You don't get a vote in that sense.
Well, all too soon. And this one is from Jamoni in Gushegu. Says, Nana, why did you only bring an MPP man alone into the studio? Well, look, we tried Mr. Manibuama. My producer tried, and we couldn't get him. And then a couple of other guys. So I'm telling you, we tried to get an NDC politician in the studio so we can have a balanced discussion. It just didn't happen. But all too soon, that's all time would allow us. And tomorrow we'll be back to do this all over again. I want to say thank you, Kweku, for God and country.
Thank you for holding brief for the NDC.
Now I was holding brief for the country. So thanks a lot and have a good evening.